The coffee tasted better than usual. It usually was bitter and left a disquieting sensation in her stomach. Today it warmed her cold hands and helped her cling to the task at hand. The sugary donuts didn't hurt either. Please, remind me again why we're going through interviewing all of these college students instead of just grabbing a resume of some professional off the internet and calling it good? Well, given my high turnaround rates, I've begun to develop a bit of a reputation dash. Well deserved, I'm sure, the man quipped. Among the professional crowd, continued Sarah. Besides, college students happen to be a cheap, renewable resource. Nah, you just like younger men. Eyes narrowed and shaking her fist, one of these days, Gabe. As tempting as that sounds, I'll have to take a rain check on it today, Sarah. I've got a lunch meeting that I simply can't miss, Gabe, the human resources director said. So I don't get any help on the interviews, pouted Sarah. I'd love to, but this time you're on your own. Gabe said, walking towards the door. I'm sure even you can manage. Cradle robber. The door slammed shut as Sarah's donut impacted where his shoulder blades had been. When he accepted Coach Robbie's offer to look into the internship, Dane hadn't realized a few things. First off was the fact that he'd be needing a ride. Dane had his driver's license but had chosen to leave his car with his parents so he wouldn't have to deal with gas money and insurance while at college. Normally this wouldn't be much of a problem. But this was the weekend after finals week. Parties were raging and most all of his friends wouldn't have the time to give him a ride, let alone be able to. The second thing was that he should have been hesitant when Coach Robbie offered him a ride to the interview. Are you sure about giving me a ride to the interview? Sure, I'm meeting a friend nearby anyway, said the coach. Come to think of it, he's the one who told me about it in the first place. Cool. Could you put in a good word for me? Okay, if it comes up I will. Thanks. The coach had hit his midlife crisis a while back and still had the prerequisite red sports car. After getting into the RX-8, Dane checked himself in the mirror. His grey suit was leftover from the welcoming dance that occurred every fall and it still looked rather sharp on him. He ran his fingers through his hair a few times trying to straighten it and settled back to enjoy the ride. What should have taken 3 hours ended up taking slightly less than 2 as Coach Robbie sped between cars and worked his way up the traffic column at rapid speeds. Aside from the stale trail mix in his back seat and a few screams, the trip was uneventful. Staring upward towards the tall, grey spire that was the Jisoo Corporation building, Dane couldn't help but feel a little small. The imposing building's face was dotted with stone busts of angels and demons and looked like a piece out of Greco-Roman Monthly. Looks like this is the place, he commented to nobody in particular. Coach Robbie dropped him off an hour or so early and told him that they'd meet up in a nearby park after the interview. Dane sighed, checked himself over, then walked into the building. The lobby was pretty typical of big businesses. The walls and furniture were done in neutral colors. Browns, tans, and blacks everywhere. With the same 2 security personnel and the same receptionist with the overly long nails and hair only slightly larger than her pet dog. After taking in the room, Dane made his way to the receptionist whose clothing in no way matched the neutral atmosphere of the lobby. Didn't magenta blouses die off a few years ago? Hi, my name is Dane Bishop. That's nice, sweetie, mumbled the receptionist as she checked her nails. I'm here for an interview. Okay, with who? Drawing a blank, yeah, that sounds intelligent, for the internship. Oh. That one. It's on the 15th floor. Thank you, Dane said. He was only slightly disappointed when she flashed him a smile. You're welcome, go away. Figuring that he could try to get into his interview early, Dane headed towards the elevators. Besides, the receptionist was giving him the creeps. I really think that I can do a good job here, Thank you for your application, we'll be contacting you. It was barely noon and it looked as though today was going to be another long one. After the latest applicant left, Steve Jones, 21, 3.87 GPA. Sarah took out a blank piece of paper and scrawled busy on it. She couldn't help but sag her shoulders and hang her head a little as she grabbed her lunch and headed towards the door. She had been overjoyed when she was granted the ability to choose her new assistant. She had been certain that she'd been right in bugging Mr. Christensen until he allowed her to set up this internship program. It had only taken a few hours for her to pick up the finer points of interviewing people from Gabe, the Human Resources Director. And she went into yesterday's interviews feeling excited and hopeful. After all, it wasn't often when she'd be able to skip work for not 1 or 2, but 3 days. This was all prior to yesterday's bunch though. Her opinion of her plan had dropped considerably in the last 24 hours. Before this she had been used to dealing with professional people who had their act together and who actually knew their subject material. Several of her candidates showed up to the interview unprepared. Others showed up haggard from parties. One even discovered that she was in the wrong building. Some didn't even bother to show up. The ones who did show up ready to go often disappointed her with their stuffiness and inexperience. Despite all that, she couldn't help but feel a little heartened by the thought of taking an extra long lunch as she taped the sign on the door, locked it and walked towards the lunchroom. Busy, read Dane, I guess they're still doing an interview. Dane was still a bit antsy from his ride into town. He couldn't bear the thought of waiting out in the hallway for almost an hour till his interview was scheduled. Well, might as well have a look around the place. Wandering through the halls caught Dane glimpses into a few offices and saw the usual cramped spaces, family photos on people's desks, and plenty of filing cabinets. As he made his way down the hall, Dane caught a whiff of something that made his stomach growl. So this is where the food is. A peek wouldn't hurt. The place was well furnished for something you'd find inside an office building. There were 2 coffee machines, a half-finished box of donuts, a large refrigerator, a pair of vending machines, and several microwaves as well as 3 small tables set off to the side complete with a woman. Wait. Women aren't office furniture. Hi, Dane ventured. The woman, who had been thoroughly engrossed in her sandwich, looked up for a moment then refocused her attention on the sandwich. So much for lively conversation. Dane decided that the donuts were looking lonely. Even though Rob arrived 4 to 5 minutes ahead of schedule, Gabe was there to meet him. He seemed to have a sixth sense about that kind of thing. They had chosen to meet at a small bar called the Alibi. During the hours they couldn't serve copious amounts of alcohol to the underage or football crowds. The Alibi happened to serve pot stickers. As rumor would have it, the best pot stickers in town. This was apparently a well-kept secret because almost no one chose to have lunch there. Well, it was that or the rats. Rob put in his order and joined Gabe at a booth near the back. What are you going by these days? Roger? Robert? Why not the old-fashioned Rami Dash? How long have you been waiting for me? All week. After a long look at the man, Rob decided to believe him. So, what is it that you wanted to talk about? Well, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind coming back and helping us out for a bit. I thought that I made it clear when I quit that I didn't want to deal with your kind anymore. Clear as crystal. But it would hardly be like your old job. I'm getting sent off because of someone that upper management is on, and I'd like you to take over my position while I'm gone. That's generous of you. But as I said, I'm done with that. Oh. Not even after all these weeks I've spent buttering you up? I thought you had an ulterior motive for showing up at my games. Well, there was that, but the girls didn't hurt either. And from there the topic turned towards the team's chances of winning. Which of the players needed to get better, and the girls' measurements. It started with the donut. Then he got bored and decided to see if the sandwich lady would react if he stared at her long enough. Finally, it settled into a comfortable conversation. It can't be that bad. But it is. I've been interviewing these people for the longest time and I haven't found a single one worth talking to. They're all boring. Disorganized. Or drunk from partying? All of them. Yes, every single one. Well, I might have a better chance then, he said, extending his hand. I'm Dane Bishop, pleased to meet you. Sarah looked from her sandwich to his hand. Then back again as she recalled her ranting about the applicants. Well, there are worse ways to introduce myself. She eventually set down the sandwich.